we'll just see where we go from there, and we'll just stick with YouTube. You know, I think it's the AI is picking up. You know, probably they scan every single video. I mean, I get I've had 2 other ones with Get Set Up classes where I have I use videos in the classes. You know, you've seen the classes, and they've come back and they said you've used copyrighted videos. Okay, or not quite that. You've infringed copyright rules and regulations. Okay, and I think they blocked 2. Now that was when I was taking the classes and I was loading them onto YouTube in order to load them onto my website.
Yeah.
Now I don't load it onto YouTube. I load it directly onto my website with a link to Zoom.
Yeah.
So now it goes to Zoom and doesn't go to YouTube.
Yeah.
And so yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Just because I know I'll forget it if I don't. It just so happened to be today of all days, you know.
Anyway, so a little bit of continuity from our where we left off last week. So I became a subscriber of ChatGPT
well done.
4.0.
Yeah.
And I posed a question. I just said that a friend of mine, Michael, and I were discussing his relationship with ChatGPT. And one of the subjects that we were discussing was the Ark in a biblical context. And I just said, he suggested I should ask you to create an image of what the Ark may have looked like. And I just said, is that possible?
Right.
And it's produced an image, which I'll try and share with you.
Okay.
How do I do that? Somewhere down the bottom here? No.
Yeah, there's there on the right-hand side of the screen, there's a little up arrow.
Share screen. Yeah, there we go. So can you see that?
Not yet. It's still coming through. Oh, okay. Okay, so it took a different approach. You were wanting the boat, weren't you?
Well, that's what I was kind of expecting. But anyway, so it says here, here's an illustration of the Ark of the Covenant, capturing the intricate details and mystical atmosphere often associated with its descriptions. And then it says, let me know if there's any aspect you'd like to adjust or explore further. And I said, no, that's interesting. I said, my understanding is that the covenant is an agreement between God and a person or people. The Ark, however, is a representation of Eden. You know, why does a covenant need an Ark? Would it be that the covenant can only exist in a holy place? So, and it says here that the reply was, your interpretation is fascinating and touches on some deep theological themes. Indeed, the covenant represents a profound agreement or promise between God and humanity, often seen as a way to establish relationship, guidance, and commitment. The Ark of the Covenant might then be seen not just as a container, a big bug walking across my screen, not just as a container, but as a symbolic bridge between the divine and human worlds, a sacred meeting place for the covenant. When the ark is understood as a representation of Eden, it suggests that the covenant isn't just about laws or directives, but about a way to return to an ideal state of communion with God. Eden was a space where God and humanity coexisted in perfect harmony, and the ark could represent a means to rekindle that lost relationship. Thus, the covenant may require a wholly dedicated place, symbolised by the ark, as a way to create a sacred environment conducive to this renewed relationship. The ark's holy status and its presence in the holiest place within the tabernacle or temple reflects that the covenant is meant to be approached with reverence and purity. In a sense, the ark provides the framework and place for the covenant to be alive and present among the people, ensuring that this divine promise is preserved in an atmosphere of sanctity. And I said, well, that's fascinating.
It's really interesting, very, very interesting indeed. So what is your opinion?
Well, it was interesting in the sense that I actually hadn't thought about the need for an ark for the covenant to exist. You know, like, I mean, I've studied lots of scripture around covenants, you know, which is typically between, in Genesis, between God and the chosen people or persons.
Right.
But I can't recall in any of that study the need for that covenant to exist, you know, in a particular environment as such. And it's something that, quite frankly, hadn't crossed my mind either.
Right. Right.
So when this response came up, and the image in particular, it's like, oh my goodness, that's that's something quite different from what I'd anticipated. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I love the image. I think it's brilliant. Okay, and it's very clear.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of symbolism around it as well. You know, even the circular window in the roof, and
yeah,
and and the things on carved out of the actual.
And even like sitting in the circle on the floor, you know. So
yes.
So I thought that was fascinating. So thank you for inviting me to ask the question. It's not at all anything like what I thought I'd get.
Okay, well, what you should do now is maybe put the word either Noah in or boat in, you know, and ask for an image, you know, and
yeah, no, I was just fascinated that it, you know, because like the question that I asked was, you know, I said one of the subjects that you and I were discussing was the ark in a biblical context.
Yeah.
And I just said, he suggested I should ask you to create an image of what the ark may have looked like.
Okay.
And there you go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, fascinating.
Well, it is fascinating.
Yeah.
And, continue now from there, and you know how he answers, and you know how he draws.
Yeah.
I would, you know, that you can download that picture. Huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Right, and you know how to.
Yeah.
So it's fun. Okay. I keep my images in a directory.
Okay. Yeah. So I thought you might be interested in that.
Yeah, I am definitely. I am interested in that. Absolutely amazing. Yeah. He uses the imagination. So I use him, as you know, on a daily basis, and to today I started a different. Well, I didn't. I started a week ago, but I uploaded today a children's stories at a higher level. I did the ones for sort of like 5-year-olds, 3, 4, 5-year-olds, and then I decided I wanted to aim really at early primary school, okay, and first year primary school, and maybe the first 3 years at primary school. And so I created that, and I loaded those. If you go to that particular website where I put them, you will see them. And I created images. I asked him to create images there. I wanted the school sort of that they were at school. So the way I started the story off was, the school bell rang, and 4 friends, and I got 2 males and 2 females, went out because it was the weekend. It was Friday, and then they spotted something in the forest. Okay, and so now I called the story what was it now? Something Forest of Mysteries, okay, or the Forest of Mysteries. And I intend to have all my adventures in the forest, okay, with the help of ChatGPT. And he's produced 3, which I tweak quite a lot because, So that's now a sort of another channel in my YouTube channel.
Yeah. No, I think it's good, because the other thing I did too, based on your recommendation, was with some writing that I started to do.
Yeah.
Was pop it through, after the input and the editing, to pop it through Grammarly.
Yeah.
And I was quite interested and surprised as to the changes but the quality of the output from there as well, so yeah.
It's outstanding. I use Grammarly every time before I publish something.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you set it. I set it up Grammarly, that is, I remember probably a year or more ago, did I want it a sort of a professional approach, or did I want it a more casual approach?
I like the way it gives you that option, what's the audience you're trying to reach, so I thought it was really good.
Yeah. So now it's not only on my computer, but it's on my cell phone as well. So any of the apps that I'm looking at and creating something that I am initially, I might be even replying to something, and it'll offer a suggestion. And so I like the Grammarly as well. What you can also do with that writing is copy and paste it into ChatGPT 40.
Okay.
And leave it quite open. Okay, so just put your intentions on one line. I'm intending to write an article or write a book. Maybe I guess, I don't know if you would start off, or a chapter of a book. The first chapter of my book. Book is about this, and maybe a one-liner or something. And here is my first chapter. And can you improve on it? Can you add to it? Do you think you take away? Just give him the freedom to do all that. Okay. And depending on what your intent is, okay, and you must make that clear in the beginning, what your intent is. Then let him know that, and he will focus on that intent diligently. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'll do that. I'll definitely have a look.
What are you writing about?
Well, I was sort of thinking on the back of the book, about the pursuit of mastery. And I just sort of thought, well, even in terms of those areas that I quite like, I sort of thought, well, using that in pursuit of theme, I thought, oh, well, here's a thought bubble, so I thought, oh, well, if I take wax, for example, and I just posed the question, and I basically said, a bit like you've just said in terms of articulating an intent. And I said
about the wax before.
Yeah, and I just said, so if I was to write a book around the topic of wax on wood, meaning, within a woodworking context, what do you think the various subject matter would be that I should canvass?
Right.
And it came back with a really detailed response, like,
yeah.
It had about 20 chapters. So,
yeah.
That's great, yeah, and then and I love the way it always has this sort of side commentary about that's a great topic, like
yes,
there's not many, there's not much, no one's really sort of written about that sort of topic like that sort of thing, and
okay.
And then in what I started to do, I've only literally just started. I said, okay, well, like you've said in chapter 1, like this is the sort of stuff that you think, should be covered off. So tell me a little bit more about, this particular point you've raised here, And lo and behold, out comes,
Yes, it does it. Yeah. It's very similar to what I do with the stories. Okay.
Yeah. And I'm thoroughly enjoying it. Like, for example, like in that introduction chapter, it sort of said, wax has been used on, artifacts and so on, since ancient Egypt and the Greeks and this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
And I was sort of looking at it and I was sort of thinking, oh, well, no, that's interesting. And then I was like, can you give me some examples? Like some specific examples of, that you've made this general statement. So let's just drill down into that a bit more. I was just like, yeah, no problem. Here we go. So.
Yeah. And you can also say to him, based on the first chapter, create an image for my book.
Yeah.
My cover.
Yeah.
I love that because he really comes up with it's really appropriate. It really deals with what's in the story.
Yeah. So it's a great research tool. And then anyway, so I got like, I don't know, maybe half of the first chapter, put it down sort of thing. And I sort of, was working on that a bit and personalizing it and, making it first person language and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then I thought, oh, well, I'll just pop that through Grammarly and just sort of see how it comes up. And, it was just like, oh, wow, this is great.
Yeah, it is, because I find that Grammarly makes a lot of corrections to ChatGPT.
Yes, quite a lot. Yeah, I think in that first half chapter there was something like 87 suggestions or something like that.
Yeah. And the rewording, ChatGPT words it in a certain sequence in a sentence.
Yeah.
And Grammarly then puts it in a professional.
Yeah.
And so yeah.
And removes a lot of redundancy and repetition and that sort of thing as well. So
yeah.
No, I think it's brilliant. But the thing that I really like about it is I just sort of seeing it adds so much value to the creative process, that I see myself applying to it. It's not just a case of, I'll write a book for me, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I noticed in Grammarly, it also, you can run that check for plagiarism, but part of that check is also about whether it appears to be AI generated.
Okay, okay. I
Yeah,
haven't tried that. That's interesting.
yeah,
And have you tried it?
yeah, yeah. And the fascinating thing is there was a couple of paragraphs there that I just wrote myself, and it just flagged them, says, "Oh, this looks a little bit like it might have been AI generated," you know. So,
Uh-oh.
but it was my own writing. It wasn't anything that I'd used from ChatGPT. So yeah, no, but it was good. Yeah.
Yeah. When I was, writing for other people and so on, then I always used the plagiarism
Yeah.
check, and it often became frustrating because I think I'm not sure, it's something like 5 or 6 consecutive words identical to something else on the internet.
Yeah.
And when you're dealing with business, you so often just use the same phrase,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
and so, but it comes in handy. I must try that plagiarism, the AI generated one. Yeah.
Mm, mm.
Yeah.
But no, it's they're really good tools. And I just sort of thought, well, not only does it help you become much more productive, but it's not a substitute, for your own leadership on whatever the topic is that you're exploring, So
Leadership, I like that. I was going to say ingenuity,
yeah,
and I agree. I mean,
yeah,
the whole journey that I'm on now um, is the direction is I'm allowing that to happen naturally. Got nothing to do with AI. Okay, I'm just sort of finishing off the stories, uploading them, and now learning to market.
mm.
Um,
But
you know,
it struck me like, with a lot of like renowned authors like Stephen King or, like those fiction writers and that, you know, there's a lot of books that are in their name as the author that they actually don't write all the content in.
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
and so they get other authors to write chapters or, whatever, and they just go back and edit it basically. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But they probably won't get other authors. They'll get AIs now too.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, and you see, a year ago, I was thinking it's no use writing anymore because AI can produce anything. Um, and I have a very different view now.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just this, and it's just a very simple topic, but just the way that, that, and with the help of Grammarly, where you can just sort of say, look, the intended audience is, people with not a high level of knowledge in the area. I'm trying to convey a story, so the writing style can be very, very informative, but at the same time in a very simple language, so
Right.
yeah.
Right.
And as I said, the overriding context for me was, this pursuit of mastery thing. So within that idea of, okay, so let's just talk about a simple topic like wax on wood. So from a mastery perspective, this is the scope of that topic, rather than you buy a bit of tin of wax and rub it on a bit of wood. So,
Right. Right. Oh,
and for me, it's almost like provided a bit of a writing framework in the sense that using that context of in the pursuit of mastery of, I can apply that to literally any topic that I want.
yeah. Yes. Yeah. So do you see yourself producing a book?
Several, yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, excellent.
Mm.
Okay, and will it be around woodwork and that sort of thing, or would it be more spiritual?
I think at this stage it'll probably be grounded around some of those woodworking components, but not the mainstream stuff. It's just topics that I have a particular interest in. But I want to convey that information in such a way that it tells the story, rather than, oh, well, here's a bunch of facts that you may not have been aware of, or what do I actually want it to be an engaging story that informs and educates along the way. You know, so.
Okay.
Mm.
So story as in entertainment, or story as in education?
A bit of both. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I was looking at a whole bunch of books on my bookshelf, you know, and I picked up, you know, so, well, in fact, I picked up a book about, you know, refinishing furniture. And I just opened up, there's only one chapter in there about wax. And it was literally like, oh, well, if you want to use wax, this is sort of how you use it. You know, it's like, well, that's pretty boring.
Right. Yeah.
And also incredibly shallow, you know. So, because, you know, like just on that topic of wax, there's just so many different types of waxes. There's beeswax, and then there's plant-based waxes, and then there's, you know, artificially manufactured waxes, and they all have different uses and applications and properties, and you know, so it's, you know, it's a huge subject matter on its own right, you know.
Right.
And I just sort of thought, well, if you take an approach where you want to, you know, be masterful in the application of a simple thing like using wax, well, there's a lot of territory to cover.
Right. Right.
And from a creative perspective, you know, like I'm proposing and putting in some recipes for people to try themselves, and you know, vegan options in the sense of, you know, solely plant-based products.
Mm.
And then that sort of sparked a whole sort of line of thought in my mind. I thought, well, even when we use a word like vegan, you know, we might have even briefly discussed it last week, you know.
Yes, we did discuss it last week, yeah.
You know, that people might just think it's just about food. Well, it's not. You know, it's much different than that, you know. So,
yeah, and you mentioned beeswax.
Yeah. You know, so so I'm feeling quite energized by it. Yeah.
Fantastic. So you now got a direction. What would you say? You said various books. You'd like to produce various books, sort of very broadly, around what sort of categories, or you know, if you had to put your name on a website and underneath it put 3 or 4 words to describe these categories, what would they be?
Yeah, well, that's still evolving a bit, but I think the process which I'm sort of digesting at the moment is, out of that first book about the pursuit of mastery, I think what is starting to emerge out of that is, you know, that if you take a masterful approach to living your life, then no matter what the topic, you know, you should be able to approach whatever the topic is, whether it's about, you know, pursuit of mastery relating to growing microgreens. You know, you can develop a thinking framework to say, well, these are the sorts of things that you would naturally want to explore around that topic, you know.
Yeah.
And so it changes the mindset away from, oh, how do I do this, to a more fully rounded understanding of, well, what does this mean? You know, and if I was to take an interest in growing, for example, microgreens, then what does that mean in terms of my lifestyle as such, if I chose to pursue that?
Right.
And what are the sorts of things, depending on, you know, was the Plumstead methodology, is like the why. What's the why behind it? So why am I doing this? Am I doing it for nutrition, or am I doing it for relaxation, or am I doing it to learn something? Or so.
Mm.
And I think that exploring topics around that enables you to think differently and more broadly about things, you know. And I think that's sort of been a melding of that whole approach of taking a masterful approach to things. But I think just also for me personally, you know, like all that scriptural study I do, you know, that I think it naturally, well, has for me anyway, develops an inquisitive outlook. So that, you know, that so much of the scripture is about, you know, life and new creation and you know, being the best version of yourself and all of those sorts of things. So the simple act of going for a walk and just being present to the trees that you're walking past, or noticing the sunrise, or noticing the clouds in the sky, or feeling the breeze on your face, or whatever, develops this curiosity around, you know, well, you know, this is part of creation. I'm walking in God's creation right now, you know. So, and then for me, it brings up all the whole mixed bag of thoughts around, you know, being grateful for the experience and what a gift it is and how beautiful it is, and, you know, just a whole raft of things sort of thing. And I thought, well, that's a really different way to approach things, rather than, you know, and I think our business training probably helps, you know, funnels us down this path of, well, just give me the facts, you know, just give me the facts.
Yeah.
Where it's much, much richer than that, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's but where that lands, that's still work in progress at the moment. So yeah.
Mm. Interesting work in progress. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what, you got about another 10 days before you leave your work?
Yeah, can't come quick enough, but anyway.
I'm so pleased you're finding a direction now. That's marvelous.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I think too, though, like I was talking to my older son last night. Oh, he's just talking about what's going on at work for him.
Yeah.
And I just sort of said to him, oh, I said, corporations, like, they just have so much potential, but end up being so disappointing, you know?
Yeah.
And just the way that they make decisions and the way that they do things, you just think, goodness gracious, what on earth are they thinking, you know? And I think that's the trouble, they don't think, you know, it's just shoot from the hip, you know, so.
Yeah. That's where true leadership comes from with individuals.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's probably one of the major flaws I see in, well, maybe in all of humanity, but when you look at organisations, people lust after positions of power or titles and stuff like that. And once they get in there, they, like, this is a generalisation, but many of them, it's all about me.
Yeah, and they don't have the leadership quality, the natural leadership qualities, or they haven't developed leadership qualities.
No, and they don't even sort of understand the organisation in which they hold a position and their position within that organisation, and, you know, the sorts of things that they should be focusing on.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, And like that conversation with my son then went into, you know, like, well, you know, what should we do? You know, and I said, well, that's a good question. And one that you should pursue and think about from lots of different contexts, you know. So
ask the why question.
yeah, yeah. And don't have a starting point from, you know, oh, will this make money? Like, just stay right away from that, you know, just
Yeah.
So no, I'm really enjoying the just the, you know, the new way of thinking, I think, is probably a way to characterize it. Yeah.
Or a new way of using new tools.
Yeah, no, very much so. Yeah, like these tools, like even if you use it like from a woodworking analogy, like it's a new tool. It's makes this so much more enjoyable, and
Right.
the quality of the output is so different, you know. So
Yeah.
And really, from where I sit at the moment, you know, as you demonstrate every week, is it doesn't matter what the topic is. It really doesn't. Like you can dive into it any which way you want to, you know.
Yeah. But just coming back to woodworking, you know, and relating it to AI as well. You know, you can now you know, program an AI to carve a piece of wood in anything you want.
Yeah, that's right.
And you can also print whatever you want, okay, no matter what it is.
Yeah. One of the forums that I follow, one of the few that I follow now in the woodworking arena, they did a bit of an experiment around trying to use AI to design a piece of furniture. And they failed miserably because they said, oh, you know, that what was designed could not physically be built. And I just sort of, you know, on the basis of our conversations and our recent experience, it just highlights the importance of, as you have rightly put it, is articulating the intent and posing the right questions rather than just, you know, if you don't ask the right questions and don't have the right, you know, analytical approach to thinking about a particular issue that you're trying to convey to the AI, then you're setting yourself up for failure, aren't you? You know, like it's the old garbage in, garbage out process, isn't it? So it just further highlights to me the importance of, you know, working with the tools, but taking the time to understand, as you have, how to communicate with these tools, you know, for it to understand what's important for you and what your intention is and what you're trying to achieve, and having the ability to sit down and articulate all of those dimensions. Because if you don't do that, then, you know, the richness of the replies that you get is wasted, really, isn't it? You know, so.
Yeah. It does boil back down to the why. Okay, if you're talking about programming an AI to create a piece of furniture, okay, why?
And I think maybe that possibly is how the algorithm works. It's like, why do you want to do this? What are you trying to do? You know, like,
yes. Okay, so you know, if you enjoy woodworking, okay, there's something spiritual about creating anything. Okay? Now, you obviously, that's not going to happen, okay? Because the AI is doing all the creative work. You've put in the programs and the instructions, which is as you've discovered this last week, what you put in could become very creative. Okay?
Yeah. But it also had me thinking, even like from a scriptural perspective, like it's reported that Jesus was a carpenter, and Paul, for example, was a tent maker. So just using my imagination, I sort of thought, well, I wonder how that was for them.
Yeah.
And if it's anything like, when I'm in the workshop, it provides an incredible environment where you can actually clear your mind and be open to think about, topics and issues in a way that it's very hard to replicate. Well, for me anyway, in other arenas, So,
Right. You know what I did this past week, and I suggest you do it as well. Okay. Yeah. It's ask AI, give AI your date of birth and your time of birth. You must have that time.
Yeah.
Date of birth and time of birth, and say, we're in 2024 now. Okay, tell him that. What does the next 18 months look like for me from an astrological point of view?
Oh, okay.
I tell you, I'm on the right track. I must tell you, writing stories and doing things like that, it just fits in with what he told me. Yeah. Promise me you'll try something like that.
I will. No, for sure.
Yeah. Really, really interesting. And,
I'll do that. No, for sure.
Yeah. And yeah, he talks about which planets are in alignment and which planets influence, what planets influenced you as a, I'm a Scorpio, so so the combinations, it's just so fascinating. And again, gets into the detail, okay? As long as you're clear with, I must tell you the way I experimented with it. I said, I was born on the 1st of November 1949. Can you give me an astrological chart about 2024? And he came back and he said, I need your time of birth. Okay, so I said, well, it was 8 a.m. Okay, good. And very important that, because it determines where the planets are and the positions of the planets and so on. And then he came up with this absolutely fascinating.
I'll try it.
Yeah.
So the word you used was numerological, was it?
Astronomical.
Astronomical. Okay.
Astrology.
Yeah.
Astrology. So, yeah. So you don't want astronomy, you want astrology.
Astrology, yeah. Yeah, I will do that.
Sure, you'll find it fascinating.
Well, the more you delve into that tool, the more fascinating it becomes, doesn't it? Like as that example that we opened with shows, there's nothing predictable about it.
No, absolutely not. Yeah. I've saved. I don't know if I first was there an app with ChatGPT 40, but it comes up as soon as I open up Google and in the morning. It's excuse me, it's there. It comes up and opens up and ready for me. Yeah, just saved on.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to spending more time on it, I must admit. So, yeah. Feeling quite energized about it.
And if you and if you over a weekend or something, well, it'll be every day once you leave work.
That's right.
You think, yeah, what can I have for lunch? So I've got these sort of things in my cupboard. What do you suggest I have for lunch? And it comes up with the most fascinating things.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
might be a good place to leave it for today, eh?
Yeah, I think so. Fascinating as always.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so.
So you and ChatGPT 40 go well.
Yeah, no, I'm very much looking forward to lots of conversations around that. Yeah.
Yeah. But don't forget the one I've told you about now.
No, I won't. No, I'll probably do that straight away.
I'm sure you'll be fascinated.
Yeah.
Okay, Don.
Okay, then. You
See
take
you.
care. Okay,
Bye.
bye.